Hey guys, I'd like to give you a little bit of info about some of the gear that I recommend for new pilots. If you're a student of my school, welcome. Thanks for joining me here. I'm going to go through a quick overview of the equipment that I'd recommend to you as a beginner. I'm going to start my screen share here. And I'm going to go to maxacro.com. Oh, maybe not. Here it goes. Okay. And I'm gonna go in the menu to the gear store and check out a few recommendations. And we'll start with harnesses here since it came up first, seems to be appropriate. A couple of harnesses that you guys should be interested in are the Sky G5 or the G5 Alpha. Uh, the difference between the two is that the G5 is a non-foam protection, and the 5 Alpha is with the foam protection. Otherwise, they are virtually the same harness, and they're perfect for just a general recreational harness. They both have the reserve compartment mounted under the seat, and they're fairly light, compact, and easy enough to carry. The other option that I would seriously consider is this one, the Sky Reverse 5. The major difference here is that with a reversible harness, you can uh, basically turn it inside out and it'll become a backpack. And that makes it easy for hiking. It's nice to compact your harness and glider into a single package that you can carry, up the hill. The both harnesses or any of these harnesses, uh, you'll want to have a big outer backpack to protect the harness and to use for travel. I wouldn't travel with just the reverse by itself, but it is great for hike and fly scenarios like we have at Little Black, or just anytime you have to hike a substantial distance with your gear. For a reserve, every pilot needs a reserve in their harness, and there's a few designs out there that we can look into, but I'll just skip right through and cut to the chase. The one that I would recommend most of all would be the Sky Quattro Light, and the reason that I would recommend this, the square design that you guys can see here, as well as the non-light version, they produce the most amount of drag for the pack volume. So for the amount of material, you're going to have a very good, basically material to drag ratio. They come in three different sizes: 90, 110, and 130. And the way that you calculate what size you want to get is to know what your all up flying weight is. Your all up flying weight includes your body weight, everything that you're wearing, everything that you're going to be carrying with you, your harness, the reserve itself, and the glider. So basically, you take your whole gear kit, stand on a scale with everything that you're going to fly in, and that is your flying weight. So when we talk about the weight loading placards, they're in kilos. So 90 would be the smallest option. So any smaller people, 90 would be fine. 110 is kind of your medium size, and 130 your bigger size. My recommendation, though, is that you load these reserves uh, at about 10 kilos under the top loading is the most ideal. If you're right up to the top of the weight loading placard, that's okay too, but there's a little more chance of a situation called downplaning, which is where the reserve fights against the glider in an opening. So to help prevent that situation, I typically recommend that you go 10 kilos under the top of the weight loading on your reserve. Um, 5 kilos would be okay, but 10 is better. And then the other thing to know about a reserve is that lightweight material flies at a slower speed, and you don't need as much airflow across the material for it to open effectively. Um, the difference in opening speed might be negligible in a traditional scenario, but in certain scenarios, the reserve could have very little airflow going across it, and that gives the lightweight really the advantage. And in my experience of teaching SIV and being part of SIVs, yeah, lightweight really does have a major impact on the effectiveness of a reserve. Plus, it's just nicer to carry. So I'm not exactly recommending that you carry a lightweight just for the weight aspect, but actually for the ability for the wing to open, or the reserve to open much quicker. Onto gliders, a couple great options. Now, as a beginner, you should really be looking at an A-wing. And for any pilot, if you aren't consistently hitting a spot landing target, it's kind of like the apex of being able to fly a paraglider effectively at kind of the A or low B class. You should be able to hit a spot landing target um, 19 times out of 20. And so that's your main goal. It's a little bit of a learning curve to get there. And A-wings are designed to keep you safe, and they really do help in that learning curve to make your, let's say, accidental inputs less effective. So the only true downside of an A is you'll lack a little bit of glide performance, but they're typically bigger than if you get a B. If you have a B versus an A for the same weight loading, the glider will actually be a little bit smaller. And so having the extra material helps to produce more drag, which is why your glide ratio suffers. But drag is can be equated to control. So long story short, I would highly recommend that you guys get an A. One of my favorite A wings is the Air Design Easy, and it is a very effective tool for beginners learning to fly. I really like this glider because they're using a simple construction, a lightweight material, and it still has pretty decent performance for an A. There are some, certain wings that are super A's that are basically just maybe a half step above a skydiving parachute. And those have their use, which would be really in like training hill type scenarios. But the majority of the A's, and I wouldn't recommend those really, but the majority of the A's that I recommend have some degree of performance to them, and that can help with glide performance and being able to stay aloft and certain things like that. The Super A wings, they work well, except that they just lack so much speed that they can become a problem when the wind gets a little stronger. So the typical kind of more performance oriented A's will do good in up to about 12 miles an hour or so. Whereas those super A wings, 12 is definitely pushing it. Going down the list here, the next one on the list is the Air Design Susie. The Susie is really interesting. It is a um, kind of an all-arounder depending on what version of it you get. You could get a small wing, and it would then be a D category or maybe even a high B. But if you load this wing heavily, it becomes a mini wing, and that could be fun if that's what you're looking for. It's lightweight, so it's easy to carry, and they make a couple different versions of it with different options. I would recommend this wing to a beginner if you're loading it at the appropriate point. If you load it heavy, it becomes like a speed wing or a mini wing. But if you're loading it, kind of in the normal sense, it'll be like an A, a high A, or a low B. Um, the Vivo would be a great second wing if you have some uh, you know, interest in progressing to the next phase. This would be a great option. It's a mid B, not exactly appropriate for a beginner. Same with the Livy, which is the lightweight version. But if you are, already tired of your A wing and you are hitting those targets 19 out of 20, then the Vivo 2 would be a great option. Same with the Livy. Going down the list, one thing that I really love about this wing, the Air G Line, it's a single surface. It's flyable. It's a soarable wing, but the great thing about it is it is lightweight and it's great for learning kiting skills. This wing, if you are struggling with kiting, a single surface like this, and honestly, this one in particular, is a really good option for you. It'll allow you to kite in very light winds. It will suffer a little bit when it's stronger winds. It might be a little bit harder just to keep it on the ground in stronger winds. Um, but it can fly in a pretty substantial breeze of about 10 or even 12 if you're lowering it heavily. And you know, it is again just so easy to kite, and the price point is pretty nice at 2,200. It's a bit cheaper. Once you've graduated beyond the recreational normal flying, the Air G Emily Peace, that would be my wing of choice for any beginner acro pilot. If you're looking to really get into acro, you can get these wings in a lot of different sizes, and the lighter you load them, or in other words, the bigger of an acro wing you get, the easier it is to perform acro tricks. We've got a few other options here. I want to skip down to the Sky. I don't even know how to say it. GI. This is an A wing, and it is on the verge of being a super A wing. It's a very safe, very easy to fly beginner wing, and it does still provide decent performance. But this wing is very safe. If you're worried about making accidental inputs, which can happen typically launching and landing, pulling too much brake or pulling brake asymmetrically accidentally because you say trip or just become unbalanced on launch. Wings like this will really do you a lot of favors and help you stay safe. uh, I would say it's a great training hill wing. That would be my call on that. But if I had to pick a more appropriate one, I'd actually skip these ones and come down to the Anarchist 3. I haven't had the pleasure of actually flying this wing myself, but I've observed it flying. And even though it's an A wing, it's certified as an A, it really does look like a B wing. And the way that I observed it flying made me think it was a B. I even told somebody it was a B just by looking at the design uh, and making a guess. But it turned out to be an A. And if you are a talented young individual who's looking for a first wing, the Sky Anakin 3 would actually be a very good option for the beginner pilot that maybe is just a talented, naturally kind of talented, and expects to progress fast. If you're the kind of person that excels at most sports that you do, at most you know active things that you undertake, then that would be a good wing. Otherwise, it looked like it would be okay for a traditional beginner. But the problem with the high A or low B, or just in general higher performing wings, is that they tend to be less forgiving with accidental inputs or more dynamic inputs. Now, take that with a grain of salt, because weight loading and where you are in the placard on a wing really does change the dynamic behavior of the wing. So a wing that is lightly loaded will behave less dynamically than a wing that's heavily loaded. The advantage of being heavy is that it gives you more precise control. You have more confidence and ability in maneuvering. The downside of that is that accidental inputs or maybe over inputs will get away from you a little faster. So in that sense, being lighter loaded will make the wing less dynamic and more forgiving to accidental inputs, less likely to stall and things like that. The downside, though, of being lightly loaded is that you lack speed. You know, the more material you have, the slower you're going to go, which is a benefit if the winds are light and the lift is light, but it's a detriment when they become stronger. And if you're very light on a wing, then the operation parameters all kind of shift lower on the spectrum, which means that you won't be able to fly in more convective or windier conditions. And the dangerous part of that is that with the variability in the atmosphere, variability in the weather, you could make the maybe assumption that you're going to have a nice, smooth, easy flight, but then the weather changes and now it's windy or more active than you care to be in. Uh, this light loading on a wing is it's okay if you're within the placard, but you want to take that with a grain of salt and make sure that you aren't also too light on a wing because then gust, convective changes, thermals will kind of kick your butt, and that's the last thing we want is to be pulled around either on launch or after landing. All right, guys. Well, that's kind of what I wanted to share with you guys. I would really like if we could get together as a group and put in an order together. That way we can meet our quotas and whatever we don't fill, then I'll just buy stock and fill the difference. But I need to make a minimum order, and hopefully if we all kind of can get together and get our equipment at the same time, then we can fill that order and make it happen. All right. Thanks for watching. Take care, guys.